turtles. These are the
I
reasons why we can't with our frozen drinks because of Jason and the Galapagos.
Did you see his story? I'm loving all his stories on Instagram. So if you guys
Oh
aren't
yeah.
following Jason on Instagram, make sure you do. His Instagram stories are great. But did you see all the seals that were on the beach just kind of laying there going like this? I was like, that's how I feel this morning. Getting out of bed, just
That's so
this
funny.
cold weather.
Is it cold up in Rochester?
That's actually, it was really funny because I did my random little trip to New York for 24 hours. And the temperature difference, like when I was down there Saturday, you guys got up to like low 50s, and it is just like in the 30s here.
Oh
30s.
yeah, that 20-degree difference, right? So when we're, but you haven't had a lot of snow though, right?
Us here, that's what's so funny. Like, when Buffalo's been getting hammered, everybody will always text me like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And I'm like, it's so funny the difference of 40 minutes that way. It's literally 40 minutes. Like that whole snowstorm, like I could still see, like we had some snow, but I could still see the grass.
Oh wow.
Because you don't get a lot
I
of
brought a snow,
snow down there.
I brought a snowblower last year, and this year haven't needed to break it out at all. But it's still good to have just in case.
That's the thing with New York weather. You never know.
It's true.
Especially down there. You guys
Very
get pretty
true.
hot during the summer too, even compared to up here. And I mean,
Oh, definitely.
when you think of where that lands on those latitude and longitude lines, it's not that far of a difference here.
That is true.
But thank you so much for filling in for Jason today. I know you've been working on some things on the back end with us. Not a whole lot in travel news, but the topics at hand I think are perfect to talk to you about as a frequent flyer for work and pleasure. So the first article we're going to start with is airlines scaling back on rewards programs with this travel surge. What is your take on that? We're seeing a lot of changes across the board. You're seeing lounge access changes. What's your take on that?
So we're seeing the industries in terms of them cutting back. Pandemic hurt a lot of businesses. Great balance sheets. They took on a lot of debt to survive through COVID. Quotes over. The shareholders and the board of directors want to their cash flow and fix the balance sheet. So because of that, unfortunately, you're because you have this glut of availability in terms of bringing new people. The other stuff you look to cut. So you start making the cut segments that are really growing. Look at lounge access, right? The credit cards get you in. A lot of the incentives to stay with airlines, like the rollovers. A lot of people are using those. I don't want to say smaller venues but they haven't grown, and now you have more people going there. So business to scale back. We talk a lot about it in the cruise industry when you think about the and how people are losing their minds over it. But the cost of lobster, and there are some people who get 8 or 9 lobster tails, and CEOs are looking sure their businesses are viable for the future. So I think it's just something we're going to have to get really used to with the reimagining of some of these benefits that we've been used to.
Yes, I think we'll see more of that decline in your top tiers next year, because this is kind of the last year where a lot of that rollover was allowed. So I see this balancing itself out in 24. Like, I mean, I was just talking before we even joined the broadcast together that I was able to get top tier status for Hilton as Diamond, and I hit Platinum Elite with Marriott because I had quite a bit of rollover from the past couple of years dipping into land trips and whatnot a bit more. I'm definitely not going to be able to keep the Hilton status next year because I don't have anything really big planned with that. But I mean, I don't expect to keep that. I mean, there are ways that you can keep some of those statuses when you look into the credit cards and stuff, at least on the hotel side. Depending on which Bonvoy card, you can get that 30 stay base. But I think we'll see a lot of that feed off. And I think coming from within industry and seeing some of the cuts, I understand some of the cuts because you need to kind of realign the hierarchy. I mean, there were some people that were able to slip into like top tier statuses that definitely, I don't want to say don't belong, but like that's not
Yeah.
what they're for. And that's, creating that crowding, be it in the lounge or the hotel clubs. That your top tiers that are truly your top tiers, your road warriors that are on the road all the time, enjoy that little bit of peace and quiet. Kind of cutting into some of the cruise stuff. I understand not letting somebody get 8 lobster tails. I think that makes sense. I just get a little nervous when I see some of the cuts. Like, a lot of hotels are like, oh, you have to request your housekeeping now. And if you don't read that little sign, then you miss it for the day, or that whole bit I'm not a fan of.
That's a big pet peeve of mine. When I check into a hotel now, housekeeping daily. I think that's one of the perks. I'd like my bed made. I'd like the bathroom to be, and get ready. And, we're starting to hear some rumblings that cruise will back from the 2 makeups a day to 1. And that's going to be very, very, that is going to, how the cruise community is going to deal with that. We got some news yesterday that doing that immediately, starting Monday, that they were going to be reducing to.
Which line was that? You cut out for me. I didn't hear.
Royal Caribbean, Serenade of the Seas is going to start doing that. Also, the ship that's going to be doing the World's Cruise. So I guess they're trying to set the tone very, very, very that ship. But I don't know how I feel about, once a day.
I know, like people try to make the excuse like, oh, well, you don't, go in and make up your own bed and stuff twice a day. It's like, but I'm on vacation. I'm paying for a service. And, even when I travel for business, sometimes I like to come back midday instead of doing a normal lunch and kind of just like lay out for 15, 20 minutes, just kind of decompress, kind of like even on top of my stuff, like just kind of deal. And it's so nice after a long day to come back and your bed's made. It's just this bit of common peace. And of course, I always tip my housekeepers very well. Anyways, I've done housekeeping and I've seen some pretty awful, awful things in my life. And for me, that's part of the product and the experience. And, I mean, I could maybe understand where they're not doing like a full clean in cruise world on the second pass, just, like quick, make up the bed, check if there needs to be fresh towels. When you have people coming back from the pool and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
That's nice. Like that's a hard pill for me to swallow because I believe it's part of the service model. Right. You're supposed to not have that feeling of home. It's supposed to feel
right
a certain way. And I think, those people do an incredible job and it starts there.
The issues with finding people and we keep talking on cruise lines and is that staffing down, and the cruise lines have said the staffing is down. Find people, or are they trying to fix their balance sheet? But when you think about it, if work that the cabin attendant needs to do, you can double the number of rooms he has to deal with on a daily basis. So I'm not sure what's driving this change. Pretty much guess this change is not going to be met. It's going to be Lobstergate again.
I mean, I can see this well. Like on the hotel side, it's a cost thing. Like I don't see any other benefit. Like, and I even kind of understand like asking the question at check-in, did you want daily housekeeping? Because there are some people that don't want it.
Yes.
And I think, getting that ahead of time to assess. But I mean, there's still the expectation. I mean, like, land housekeeping, these housekeepers could have a board of anywhere from 13 rooms to 20 something, and there's a rooms per minute, ratio that they're held to. Um, and I just kind of wonder, especially in the cruise world, like, it's not like they're clocking out and going home.
Right.
They're there.
Mm-hmm. That's
And I'm like, where are they going? And then, I think, if that answer is to just give them more rooms with less people, I think it starts coming down to a quality
Yep.
question. So, I mean,
Yep.
in the hotel world, I sit on a few boards, and for us, a big part of that conversation is compensation. There's a lot of complaints like, oh, I can't hire anybody. It's like, but you're still charging the same rates, if not more. Like so many of our hotels, even our, some of our economy hotels that my team services, they're getting ADRs that are over 19
Mm.
during their peak, especially. And it's just, it's a question of ethics. I think at that point, it's paying your people. Like, there's a reason I pay my team more money than my competitors, because I want them to support less hotels and have more quality product going out to the hotels that they support. Would being a millionaire right now like be fantastic? Absolutely, but it's not at the cost of my reputation and the product. But not everybody thinks that way, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think that's a conversation that I think a lot of these, tourism, as the tourism industry, fortunately, it feels like those economic decisions are outweighing decisions. I can tell you, I've been very disappointed recently in that, I got back from a meeting at 3:30, and my room has, or I'm requested early check-in, and I get there at 4 o'clock, and it's, it was never like that before. So I'm definitely feeling a difference. And
Yeah, and it goes back to that owners, the investors, um, the stakeholders. I mean, it makes my service a bit more appealing because it's a cost saver. I think there's things that hotels have found, especially hotels that we work with, that you can save money on like a full time salesperson by doing something remote or whatnot. But I just think there are some things you cannot try to cut and save money on, and those frontline workers are it. That front desk, they are the first and last person that your guests are going to deal with 9 out of 10 times. That's the
yes, I've
impression.
had, yes, and I just recently, for New Year's, I was in a pretty high end bar, and I had said on the app, I have decent status. I said on the app that I was in, which was a little early, which I understand. Got there at 4:30, and my room was not. I made the typical request: could you just escalate this to housekeeping, that I'm here, so that they could potentially
Yeah.
clean my next. The front check-in person knew that, and I was shocked. So I said, I can that you're, first of all, you're late for the check-in. You guarantee 4 o'clock. It's after 4, but I know probably nothing's going to happen. But to feel like you're advocating for staff, that makes me feel like,
Yeah.
okay, the
Oh,
room's not
absolutely.
ready. Oh,
In
but the
hotel
flat
world,
out no, I'm never going to stay at that hotel again.
no. And that's kind of the funny piece of it. Is there are a lot of things kind of in hotel world where I don't want to say you have to fake it. But like for
Right.
example, if a bride calls me like, "Oh, hey, I was looking for rooms for my wedding this weekend," and I know that's a high demand special event weekend, I don't just tell her no right away. I was like, "All right, let me, check availability, kind of give it a little time." You have to give that aura that
Yeah.
you try. Like, even though
Yeah.
if you already know the answer, you have to give that that aura. So, I think it's a very fine line, but I think you're also going to start seeing a transition in hotel world too here is, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is an association called AHOA, which is Asian
Mhm.
American Hotel Owners Association.
Okay.
And that group, that demographic, owns 60% of the hotels in the US.
Oh, wow.
And you now see the next generation
Mhm.
coming in. And I will tell you, I've had multiple conversations with different younger Asian American hotel owners that are like, yeah, absolutely. Let's spend money on this where
Oh,
the previous generation was a little bit more fickle. So I'm curious to see how that starts to pan out because I think with that millennial-esque owner now starting to take over,
yep.
you'll start seeing some of that. But there's another article I wanted to pick your brain on for today, and this is from a flight attendant, and these are three things they recommend not to eat or consume on a plane. I'm curious to see your feedback. So the first one is the tap water. So this is your coffee and tea.
No circumstances should you have any of those hot beverages that tank that only gets cleaned twice a year. And they take in water day when they are turning the plane around. So, water has different makeup, different tastes, different textures, all that in that one tank. Yeah, no, bring your. There's a reason why there's Starbucks in just about every airport, tea or coffee or any of that hot stuff. I don't even like using use that hot water from that water tank.
I
Yeah,
hate washing my hands in a plain bathroom. I'm always looking for that Purell and stuff
yeah.
after. It gives me the heebie-jeebies. So another one on this list is Bloody Marys, and it's because of the sodium content and a lot of the mixed cocktails. Now, I will say from my end, I have a very militant pre-flight regimen that I
Oh,
try to stick with. I have my swamp water, my greens, mix that I have. It is not the most appealing thing, but when you're traveling, a lot of the food has high salt. You kind of feel that
yes.
bloated growth. So that's why I do is that it's Greek yogurt, very high protein oriented. But I mean, I'm one of those people like on a long haul, if I don't watch the sodium like that, like, my legs will swell a bit or my feet will swell a little bit. So I try to avoid that myself. Do you have anything to add into the Bloody Marys? I know you're not really a Bloody Mary.
I think Bloody Marys are disgusting. So, that clam one, that clamata, that stuff is horrible. So
Oh, I know that,
don't drink
especially
that.
living near the border, like the Canadians, what do they call them? It's called like a Caesar or something like that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
I'm just
yeah. Ooh, awful.
sorry for the Canadians here. Like I just, it grosses me out. None, and then the last one they have on here is gas-inducing foods. So I think it's very
Mm.
easy for people to get caught up, especially if they're sitting up front and you get the menu. But I am very, very sensitive typically as to what I'm selecting. I try to stay away from like kind of the sauce thing. Definitely anything that has, like beans in it. I know that you're not a real vegetable guy, but are there any foods that you try to avoid or things that you
So
look for on a menu?
yeah, it's so funny to cutbacks, and I think the food has definitely been cut back. Um, in just my restart of flying now, it's been the same menu every single time I've been flying. Wow, there used to be a lot more variety, and it doesn't matter the airline, right? Because most way to prepare their food, so there's just some nuances. What I try to stay away allergy, so I definitely stay away with anything that has shellfish. Although sometimes when you order the beef, it has shellfish on it, so you've got to be very, very, very careful, especially in the plastic, when you're in the world, there's a lot of stuff on that platter. So you've got to be very, 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 there's no warnings of the food of, oh, there could be nuts in this. The shellfish, they don't really give you a lot of warning when they ask you, would you like the beef or you like the vegetarian? I look forward, I'm looking at that tray and really trying to identify what's there. And I ask them to take that piece away.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I try to be sensitive to it. I actually think, I haven't flown American, although I'm going to sub a little American hoot right here.
Wait,
If
I'm
you're
sorry.
interested,
During the pandemic when Delta wasn't going
to Cozumel, I know. I wish Delta. If Delta went to Cozumel, that would be like my long weekend spot. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna call it. But if you're interested in trying American, I know this is a little tip here. There's the new American Airlines, the Red Aviator credit card. All you have to do is just make one purchase. There's not even a dollar amount. You can buy a pack of gum and you can get 60,000 miles. So if you guys are wanting to try one of those American business class, first class, there's an option right there. I have found that Delta this year, I've actually found, or in the last year, I found a good variety of menus on this end. I found it to be very regionally based.
Yes.
So I've seen some differential, but I made a mistake when I went to Germany. They had, because it was Atlanta, they had some barbecue thing, and I was like, oh, that kind of sounds good. I let my guard down because some of that food just absolutely kills my stomach. So by the time I got to Germany, I was like, oh my God, why did I do that? I know better. I was kind of kicking myself.
Yeah.
It's the smoke. It's the smokiness, just absolutely killed me. One of those changes I experienced when I turned 30. I just don't have the dollars for it anymore. Are there any other things that you stay away from, or what's your kind of pre-flight regimen?
So, I try to stay away from late night flights because delayed as the day goes on than the early morning flights. But really, there's nothing I say. It's about your mood. You've got to know if something doesn't look right, it's probably not right. And go get some horrible fast food when you land. It's probably safer than eat some of the things. If you can't identify what it is, skip it. And sometimes
I think that goes for lounge food too. Because one of my biggest jokes is that for being Delta's hub, I think Atlanta overall has the worst Sky Club food. Jason and I make jokes we'll go get Boar's Head, he'll get Chick-fil-A. I will go do something else versus that lounge food too. And I think that carries over there too, is you need to be careful what you're choosing to consume in between flights too, because that can already just put you in a mood. And if you have a lot of sodium, your legs swell, that is a miserable flight, especially if you're sitting in economy and can't put your feet up. That is absolutely miserable. So we're going to start wrapping this up. So I have a tip of the day, but it's not from me. It's from Mr. Jarvis here. What is your tip of the day, sir?
Very much Haley with a flair. So, Jason Poole is in the Galapagos. An amazing time. I can't wait for him to get back to get, the inside on what's going on. He had an experience where he wanted to venture outside of the hotel, and the hotel staff, no circumstances should you go out of the hotel in the evening. So I sign up for the Smart Traveler app, and he said no. And I said that is due, especially when traveling outside of the country. The Smart Traveler app is an apartment in which it gives you an outline of the country you're visiting and be made aware of from a safety perspective. It also allows them to know that, and what happens is they send your information to the embassy, so the local air, in case something happens. Also, also on the app, it has key phone numbers, has the emergency number. You know, we think it's 911 everywhere. It's not. So it has that information. It also has the location of the embassy, consulate, or mission. So I have had friends that definitely use it when traveling outside of the country. Also get push notification. So if something happens while you're in that country, like a volcano, like a natural disaster, it's giving you information direct. They also tell you, I use it when I go to the Philippines, and there was a briefing that they gave it happen. This is the location that we're going to come and get you from. So it's just real information. So I recommend that anyone traveling out of the country utilize the Smart Traveler app. It's in the iOS app store. It's definitely something you should do, especially when traveling out of the country.
No, that's great because I always used to like look up where it is and kind of take that screenshot and keep it in my phone. So that is definitely one that I'm going to be downloading later today because that is so important. And I think it's also important to remember that when you read some warnings, especially some of the lower level warnings, that there's kind of this I don't want to call it ethnocentrism, but we kind of go over there like, oh my gosh, like the crime. And it's like the way that our country is viewed is very dangerous to a lot of other developed countries too. So kind of like keep that in mind. You can be pickpocketed anywhere and whatnot. But some of the bigger stuff, absolutely. And I'm going to quick flash a little tip from Alex here because I do this as well, is that if you have the trouble with the swelling in your legs, compression socks, I know that I wear them on long hauls myself, are a huge help, and you can get them in different sizes as well on Amazon. And she was saying that her son as well, I'm going to flash this one up here, works for the State Department often and carries the embassy beeper. So it's so important to keep in touch. So that tip is absolutely fantastic. And my last parting bit is I'm going to be introducing you all on the Today in Travel group. Let me flash our little icon up here. That we have an official destination brand ambassador for Disney, and it's going to be Miss Pam Rosenberg. So if you guys have any Disney questions, this could be theme park related, this could be cruise related, Miss Pam is going to be our Today in Travel Disney ambassador. So look out for some of the posts she's going to be posting. She's going to have some chat and development pieces, and she's going to be joining us for a broadcast fairly soon. So Pam, thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what you share. Jarvis, any other pending final thoughts?
No, I got to get to the airport. I'm traveling today.
All right, go be a road warrior.
You know it.
All right, bye guys.